Okay. You ready to start? Okay. Okay. Well, let's get busy. Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Our meeting date is Monday, August 14th, 2023. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes, 7 p.m. A warm welcome is extended to councillors, staff, delegations who will participate in this meeting, regardless of whether being physically in attendance in the council chamber and list room or being connected through web technologies. We begin tonight's meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in chambers as able are invited to stand. One of these days, I'll invite everyone to sing along. All right. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. To those viewing this meeting via the YouTube channel, a warm welcome to you. To those who are present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate or unacceptable behavior and or comments. Thank you. At this time, I invite decorum over the course of the coming meeting. I have regrets tonight from Councillor Mark Beardham. Let's move to item 2.1 of our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with a perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have already declared in writing to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise at any point in the meeting, they may so declare and act at that point. Colleagues, anyone wishing to make a declaration this evening? Seeing none, we'll move forward then at this hour. All participants are invited to speak when called upon by yours truly serving as chair. Those participating remotely who wish to speak may draw the attention of the clerk through our conferencing technology's text chat function. Remote participants are asked generally to maintain a mute state in the web conference until I recognize your right to the floor. If when I do so recognize I don't hear you because you're having some sort of technical difficulty, I will advise. Let us now focus on the people's business. I invite those in the chamber to silence and put away their phones. I invite, as I earlier indicated, decorum. Regarding item 2.2 of our meeting agenda, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads as follows, that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I call for a mover? Deputy Mayor Callum will serve as our mover, Councillor Richardson as our seconder. Any discussion or debate on the agenda? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. It seems the hamsters are moving a little slow this morning, this evening, all day perhaps. All right, let's move on to the next item on our agenda. This is item 3, the so-called consent agenda. Consent items are placed on our agenda because they're believed to be non-contentious, yet they may warrant council's recognition and or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item or more than one item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and consideration may do so. There are 29 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, anything to extract here or any corrections to the minutes that you'd like noted? Councillor Blazek, let me get your microphone. Welcome tonight. There we go.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Todd, I would like to make a minor correction to our minutes from the last meeting. Schedule A does not list myself or Councillor Johnson as having been present during all 3 of those public meetings.
Okay. To the clerk's table, do you have any concerns or questions about this matter? With Clerk Klein?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we will definitely make that correction, and we can change the resolution to adopt the minutes as amended.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to extract? Councillor Rothwell, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Todd and Council. Item 3.7, just a question I have on the Perth County update of June 2023.
Okay. Let me take note of that one. Anyone else wishing to extract anything from the agenda or suggest revisions to the minutes? All right. As we've usually done, I think we'll turn to Councillor Rothwell at this point and allow you to raise your interest in item 3.7.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd and Council. Just on page 32 of our agenda package, specifically it's the item under the planning, CAO and planning, and it deals with the Committee on Affordable and Attainable Housing Committee, and specifically I understand County Council chose to disband that committee, and I know it's old news in some respects in terms of this was a June decision, but the importance of affordable, attainable housing is in front of us each and every day. And I understand in the discussion points of County Council, they believe that there's an appropriate direction given to staff to work with partner agencies. I don't believe that the issue has changed significantly since the committee was established. And I don't see any end in sight to address the issues that were before us. So I would just like to hear from our county councillors as to the reason why, when the staff recommendation was to continue on with the committee, why county council decided to disband the committee specifically, and what actions is county council truly taking to address the concerns of our residents across the county, and specifically from our standpoint here in North Perth, where we do have the ongoing issue of affordable, attainable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. I'm not sure that my colleagues are prepared to comment on this from the county council table, but perhaps they are given notice. I can at least advise myself that I was absent from the meeting where that decision was made. It was a vacation and work period for me that required my absence from that table, and so I can't say much more about that particular matter in terms of my disposition towards it. But I don't unnecessarily want to put my colleagues at this point. Is there an audio problem out there? Are you having a hard time hearing? Okay, let me adjust the microphone. Thank you. Is that any better? It's a little bit better? Okay. So I will leave it to their discretion if they wish to comment. Deputy Mayor Kellum, do you wish to comment on this issue? Let me get your microphone. Hold on. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg, and through to Councillor Rothwell. Yes, it was voted to disband the committee. They felt there were other resources that were ample to move in progress with this. However, it was also brought up at the last county council meeting, and I believe that Councillor Kasenberg brought a notice of motion. I was unable to attend that, but I'm not sure if Councillor Duncan can speak to that.
Okay, Councillor Duncan, did you want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah.
At your discretion.
Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. Yeah, so currently, county council has decided to, at this point, we're waiting on a report to come back after Watson's does their housing accelerated funding report. There's going to be a report come back to county council that encompasses all the things that the committee had put together in all the reports, and county council is going to decide on a direction to go from there with what our housing action plan is going to be at the county at that point.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. The supplemental.
I appreciate the responses from our county councillors, and my comment is this: is that there's been plenty of conversation, discussion, research on this issue, and I believe that our residents are. I believe our residents are looking for action of each and every level of government, not just local municipality or the federal or the provincial government. I think the county needs to be at the table, and I believe they are. It's just the time for action is way past, and specifically when we talk further, lands designated and the new county official plan is imperative to move forward. So I don't want to get into that conversation just yet, because it's not specifically on the agenda, so I won't stray there. But just know that our residents are counting on us to take action as opposed to simply talking about it and researching it. That's my comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Rothwell. And I think that brings us to the end of the items that have been pulled. The minutes have been discussed with intention for revision. So let's have a look at the resolution then. As follows: consent items 3.1 to 3.29 be received for information, and the minutes of the July 24, 2023 regular council meeting be adopted as amended. And we'll trust to the clerk's team that they will amend correctly. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Blazek. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Okay, we're having some technology problem. Mine is actually stalled on my screen. Other councillors seeing it, the box is just, yeah. Okay, can you perhaps, we'll ask the clerk if she can re-trigger this vote for us? There's a few of us who are affected, so the assumption is that there's a technical problem with eScribe at this point. We can move to manual vote if we need to. Sure, I can move to manual vote, that's fine. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. And we'll allow the clerk table to play with it, see whether, I think maybe the hamsters were offended that I mentioned them. I don't know. All right. Let's move on then to item 4. We're quite privileged, very privileged to have a delegation tonight. We're joined by Mr. Phil Beard, who is the head of the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority. He's going to talk about the mandates of the Conservation Authority, the work plan, all the things that MVCA does on our behalf. I think this is his first time before the 2023 elected council, 2022 elected council, I guess. I believe that Councillor Duncan, who serves as the chair of the board of the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, would like to conduct some introductions. So I'll turn to Councillor Duncan first, and then we'll get you up here, Mr. Beard. Councillor Duncan, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Phil. The purpose of our presentation tonight is to update council on all the activities the MVCA is undertaking to improve the health of watersheds located within MVCA's area of jurisdiction. Our vision, working for a healthy environment. We'll highlight some of the activities that are outlined in the newsletter that is included in council's meeting package. Number 2, MVCA's mission is providing leadership to protect and enhance local water, forestry, and soil resources. I'll now turn the presentation over to Phil Beard, General Manager, Secretary, Treasurer, to highlight some of the major activities that are working on in 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan, and it's a pleasure to be here and away from Zoom for an occasion. I was at Goddard's at 4 o'clock, and I'm here in Listowel for 7. And I'd much rather do that than be sitting at home on Zoom trying to talk to you. Anyway, I'll just do a little background for you. This map illustrates the land use across the watersheds within our area of jurisdiction. Approximately 78% of the land in the watershed is used for agriculture. 16% is in forest. And of course, everything outlined in blue represents our rivers and streams. So we're fortunate in this watershed to have some of the most productive farmland in all of Ontario. We also have some of the finest hardwood forests in Ontario. The Maitland River is considered one of the best smallmouth bass rivers in southwestern Ontario. And the Lake Huron shoreline is highly valued for recreation and tourism. These are all natural assets that help sustain the prosperity in the Maitland watershed. And they're also the foundation of our life support system, along with clean air and a stable climate. I'll just go through some of our service areas right now. So in terms of watershed stewardship, we're focused on restoring natural areas and floodplains, river valleys, and along water courses. And there's over 6,500 hectares of floodplain, river valleys to be stored as natural areas, and 1,300 kilometers of stream buffers to establish in the watershed. Some of the key adaptations to a changing climate, we're working with the agricultural community to incorporate some important changes to farming systems. A hotter, drier, and longer summers is increasing the risk of intense rainfall events, and warmer, wetter winters means there's an increased risk of soil and nutrients to be washed off the land and into water courses. Two of the key changes that we are encouraging to help keep soil and nutrients on the land are the installation of rural stormwater management systems, which help to slow the runoff, spread it out, and allow it to sink into the ground. The second is cover crops. They help reduce the risk of soil and nutrients from being washed away during the winter months. In terms of watershed health, we're presently doing a forest health assessment, and forests are an integral part of the health of the watershed. And here's what we've learned from our assessment. The health of our forests are at risk. Forests are losing the ability to maintain their health due to the level of stress and disturbance that's occurring. 20% of the standing trees were found to be dead in the plots that we surveyed, mainly ash trees, but other species are being impacted as well. The health of forests are being affected by invasive insects, such as the emerald ash borer, and a beetle that carries the beech bark disease, invasive plants such as buckthorn, garlic mustard, and periwinkle, existing woodlot management practices, the removal of forests. Over 200 hectares or 500 acres of forests have been removed since 2015 across the watershed. Extreme wind events are also having an impact. And last but not least, a hotter, drier climate is placing additional stress on forests. So the next step is to work with landowners, counties, and the forest sector to determine how we can improve the health of forests. These are unprecedented challenges that will not be resolved quickly or easily. We're also continuing to work on the Middle Maitland Restoration Project. The Middle Maitland watershed starts just upstream of Wingham and extends to upstream of Listowel. In 2023, we've undertaken 6 planting projects with landowners. 3.4 acres of riparian areas have been restored, 2.2 kilometers of municipal drain buffers, and a total of 2,800 trees have been planted. MVCA is also working with a number of companies and municipalities to identify ways each of us can reduce the use of fossil fuels and to sequester carbon by planting trees, shrubs, and wildflowers. North Perth is part of the CFI, and the County of Huron is the only other municipality that's a part of the CFI at the present time. Turning now to our conservation areas, over the past 3 years, people across the watershed have rediscovered the value of spending time in nature. Our conservation areas have experienced a significant increase in use by the public for walking, fishing, hiking, bird watching, camping, canoeing, and picnicking. To help accommodate the increase in use and improve the experience for the public, we've been gradually improving the infrastructure in our conservation areas. We've constructed a new bridge and boardwalk at the Naftals Creek Conservation Area, located south of Godridge, and new washrooms and signage at the Lake Wawanosh Conservation Area, south of Lucknow. And we wouldn't have been able to improve this infrastructure without the support of our member municipalities and the Maitland Conservation Foundation, of which Chris Snell is the chair of. And at the Falls Reserve, it's our only campground. It continues to be a popular place for people to visit. And the Falls Reserve Campground operates and maintains all of its staffing, equipment, and infrastructure with the revenue generated by its use. There's no levy dollars that go into the Falls Reserve. And of course, the Galbraith Conservation Area. The members would like to thank North Perth Council for supporting or helping us find a way to keep this area in the public hands and for use by the public. Moving on to flood and erosion safety, the risk of flooding is increasing. Hotter climate holds more moisture in the atmosphere. This increased moisture can form atmospheric rivers, which can increase the risk of intense rainfall events, such as the storm that hit the north part of the Maitland watershed in June 2017, resulting in major flooding in the community of Harriston. MVCA works with our member municipalities to help them identify ways to reduce the risk of damages and loss of life from flooding, as well as to maintain the flood and erosion control structures that are already in place, such as the Listowel conduit. I think as council knows, we're also doing a floodplain mapping update for Listowel. The base mapping has been updated, and the draft floodplain mapping will be completed by March of 2024. The draft mapping will have to be reviewed with the public before it's approved for use in municipal land use planning documents and within our development regulations. Moving on to the Lake Huron shoreline, we're also working with our 3 shoreline municipalities to identify homes and cottages at risk from bluff collapse, shoreline erosion, and flooding. We've worked with a number of lakefront residents and shoreline municipalities to identify safer areas to relocate cottages where it's feasible to do so. And this picture illustrates a recent bluff collapse where the cottage was able to be moved back from the top of the bluff. We're also working with our shoreline municipalities and the shoreline community to develop a coastal resiliency strategy. The purpose of the strategy is to explore ways to improve the resiliency of the shoreline to a changing climate. This will be a collaborative effort with the shoreline community to consider what a healthier and more resilient way of living with natural shoreline processes, both now and in the future. It will help us look at how the shoreline will be shaped and changed in the future. So I'll turn it over to Matt for the closing slide.
Thank you very much, Phil. In closing, the MVCA members want to thank Council for their support in 2023. We look forward to working with you again on the environmental challenges we're all dealing with. If Council is interested in learning any more about the initiatives that we have outlined this evening, please feel free to contact Phil or I, and we'll be happy to organize a session to discuss them in more detail. And I'm sure there's probably some questions for Phil.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Thank you, Mr. Beard. Appreciate having you. You commented that you're glad to be here instead of using Zoom, and we're glad to see your face here with us too. Colleagues, questions for Mr. Beard or for Councillor Duncan on what MVCA is doing, or broader questions perhaps about climate change?
And we'd be happy to take anybody on a tour if they'd like to see some of the work in the field as well.
That's great. Thank you. I have a question or two, actually, and perhaps I'm going to take us down a rabbit hole that we shouldn't necessarily go down. So let me ask the first one. I think it's reasonably specific. You mentioned significant impacts in your tree study. You were looking at loss of trees in
Forest health, yes.
Yeah, forest health, and you, like the number to me that you rolled out was pretty substantial. It wasn't a small number of impacts. Are you now modeling climate change impacts to look at what more may happen to our canopy, to our forests?
Well, we are working with climate scientists, and especially on the Lake Huron shoreline, to see how that is going to change over the next 50 years. And basically what they're telling us on the Lake Huron shoreline is we're going to see higher highs and lower lows in terms of lake levels and less ice cover on the Great Lakes. So in the wintertime, that shoreline tends to be protected by ice. Once there's no longer ice along that shoreline, the rates of erosion and risk of bluff collapse and shoreline erosion is going to go up dramatically higher. So we've got over 800 structures located within the hazard line or the hazard area along Lake Huron shoreline. So there's several $100 million worth of property at risk there. In other parts of the watershed, the impacts that I've outlined, our engineer tells us that every season is flood season now. When I started back in the 70s, I'm dating myself, is we used to have real winters and you'd wait for the January thaw, and then you'd wait for the spring melt in late March or April. You'd have this buildup of snow, and we'd measure up to 30 inches of ice on the rivers. We just don't see that happening anymore. In fact, I haven't seen a spring flood for an awful long time, but I've seen floods in every other month now. So that's some of the major changes that we're seeing, which is consistent with what the scientists are telling us is going to happen. So we definitely have to make some major changes, and it's great to see North Perth being a leader in terms of being part of the Carbon Footprint Initiative and some of the other things that you're doing here, but we've got a long way to go.
Do you have a sense of how much more of the forest that currently exists in the watershed is at risk from climate change? Do you have any idea
Well,
about that?
it's all at risk.
It's all at risk.
It's all at risk unless we make some dramatic changes to looking after it.
Okay.
It's cumulative changes that are happening to the forest, not just climate change. And that's why it's going to take sitting down with scientists and foresters to figure out what's the best path forward so that our counties with their forest conservation bylaws know how to amend them as well.
And does it prompt you to plant different species of trees, for example, as you sort of plan for climate changes that lie ahead? Do you wind up choosing different tree stock because they're going to be hardier under the different conditions that are anticipated?
We're definitely starting to look at that. The other thing we're looking at is planting in the fall, doing more fall planting than the spring, because we can't depend on enough moisture for those to get good survival rates from spring planting. We are looking at whether we should start planting Carolinian species now up in this area based on the climate we're going to have. So we're waiting for advice from basically restoration ecologists and foresters to see what we should do.
Okay. Sort of one last question for me. If you had your way, if you could give municipal councils advice about what they should be doing to address carbon footprint sort of within the corporation, what kind of tasks would you be telling councils like ours to look after?
It's the same thing we're doing at Maitland Valley. We cut an awful lot of grass. So any areas that are in turf that don't need to be, we're putting them in wildflower meadows or shrub beds or trees. That's one of the things we're doing. Of course, anything that burns fossil fuels, we're looking at ways to reduce it. So, for example, our staff, when they go on site inspections now, they schedule as many as they can in a day so they're not running out every day with the vehicle. So we're also looking to going to more electric vehicles, but they're still pretty expensive, so we're looking at hybrids as well. The hybrids are giving good mileage as well. But to be honest, the carbon footprint was formed because there really is no guidance on what to do. So we're all learning from each other and trying to figure out what's working for others and just trying things because, to be honest, there isn't a lot of leadership around that. So we have to figure out what to do basically from the ground up, to be honest, because we're the ones that are on the ground having to do things, and we know what needs to be done and what options we have to try and change it. So we really need support in terms of the program should be built from the ground up instead of the top down. So we really need federal and provincial governments to invest in municipalities and conservation authorities so that we can build the programs we need instead of trying to adapt the programs they give us and try and make them work. So I'm sort of going off script there again, but that's my read of it after 44 years in this game.
Thank you. I led you off script, so it gets forgiven by council, generally speaking. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Beard? Councillor Johnston, please. Yeah.
Not a question, just a comment about the cover crop thing, and I'm so glad to see that push. We've been, in 25 years that I've been doing cover crops, we used to plant oats or peas, and today we were planting a 7-way mix that had vetch, peas, oats, turnips, sunflowers, clover, and I don't know what else, but it's changed so much. So I'm glad to see the push, and there should be a law against open dirt for the winter, because it's just that's erosion waiting to happen, and I'd rather leave my ground covered, and if my neighbors want to leave it open, I have no problem collecting their topsoil. I'm fine with that. But I'm so glad to see the cover crop push, because it's much needed.
Thank you. Anyone else with a question? Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Do you have any recommendations from a conservation perspective for our residents in terms of what they can do to help with climate change in our own community? And are you also not just addressing councils, but helping to address and communicate with communities at large to, again, help regular citizens make changes too?
Yeah, we are we are at best we can with the resources we have, and I'll just put this in context. We just got back to the levels of staffing we had in 1995 last year, so we've been playing catch up for 25 years. But yes, we are working with communities and landowners where they're interested. So basically, it's a matter of looking at where you use fossil fuels now. And one of the biggest areas I think that we have is just turf grass. I think in my municipality, I'm not going to name them, that they cut like 125 acres of grass a week, and that's just the public lands. And then on the private lands, there's a lot of it too. So we've been trying to encourage things like naturalized boulevards, naturalized lawns and backyards. Using electric lawnmowers. There are things that you can do, but I'm probably missing a few. The stewardship staff could probably give you a better answer than that, but I can look into a few more if you'd like me to. That's just off the top of my head, but that's all I can think of at the moment, anyway.
All right, Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and thank you for the presentation, Phil. As always, it's great to have you here. Just for Council's information, again, Maitland Valley Conservation Authority staff are involved with the Bayfield Maitland Valley Source Protection Area as well, and we appreciate the work of staff involved, and certainly we do have a meeting coming up in 2 weeks further, but that's an important part of the aspect which doesn't necessarily, at first thought, come into the Conservation Authority jurisdiction, but it certainly does. It's a mandated program through the province now, and at least there's one program which the province continues to fund, so we appreciate that. Hopefully there will be more, but again, I just wanted to highlight that point as well. Thanks very much, Phil.
Right.
All right, anyone else? Last opportunity for questions. We don't get them standing here very often, so
I'll come back anytime. I'll come back
anytime. All right, Mr. Beard, thank you very much for all that you do, for your extensive experience in your career. We're very honored to have you still working with us, and grateful for the service that you've rendered and that your team renders. Councillor Duncan, we're proud of you for taking on the chair in the last 2 years, and appreciate the work that you're doing there to support this work. So, again, many thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Per our agenda then, we have planned to hold 2 public meetings to address the remediation of 2 drains. So let's consider a resolution that allows us to adjourn from our regular council session and open up a public meeting or 2. I have that resolution before me as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth adjourns at 7:39 p.m. For the purpose of public meetings under the Drainage Act concerning the following: consideration of the Broughton Municipal Drain and consideration of the Bender-Quantz Municipal Drain. Can I call for a movement? Councillor Richardson, thank you. And Councillor Andreessen will be our seconder on this one. Any discussion or debate on this one? Where are we at with e-scribe? You want to give it a shot? All right, let's give it a shot. We'll see if we can vote electronically or not. And that's looking promising. All right, we seem to have some struggle with some. So, Councillor Andreessen, you're not seeing anything come up. What say you? In favor? Councillor Rothwell, you're not seeing anything come up?
I'm in favor as well.
All right, thank you. I suggest that those who are struggling reboot the e-scribe. Councillor Johnston, are you out as well? Do you wish to cast a vote then? You're in favor? Are we missing anyone else? Councillor Duncan, thank you. You're in favor. Councillor Blazek, you're in favor. I think that gets us the roll call, and call that carried. Thank you. It means that we are certainly temporarily adjourn from our regular council meeting for the purpose of public meetings. So let me grab the big bundle of paperwork that allows us to do that. This is a opportunity for council. I welcome those to a public meeting, which is an opportunity for council to consider the report for the Broughton Municipal Drain. It is also our opportunity for any assessed landowners who are with us this evening who wish to make comment about what has been proposed, what is being proposed, to do so. So welcome to those who have come for that purpose. At this hour, we are going to call for the expert report on this from Chris Dietrich of Dietrich Engineering Limited. And he is with us in the chamber, so we'll make a few audiovisual adjustments here so that he can be seen and heard. Just hang on. And I think we're ready for you, Mr. Dietrich.
Okay, perfect. I think there's one face I recognize, but again, my name's Chris Dietrich with Dietrich Engineering Limited, and I've done a little synopsis of the Broughton Drain that we planned to construct if all bylaws are passed. The name of the drain is the Broughton Municipal Drain 2023, and some history on this tile drain. It was originally constructed in 1953 and consisted of the installation of 1,603 meters of 150 millimeter to 350 millimeter diameter tile, and the installation of 4 concrete catch basins. This drain outletted in lot 24 at concession 12, as you can see on our drawing there. And then our newly proposed drain is designed to a 38 millimeter per 24-hour period, and outlets in lot 24 concession 11, so the concession to the north, which saves a road crossing. The outlet for both of these drains is the Gilkinson Municipal Drain. It's an open ditch. So our drain consists of the installation of 1,375 meters of 350 millimeter diameter to 750 millimeter diameter tile, and the installation of 7 catch basins. So there's one at the first line fence, at the very top of the drain, a few at the road, and then as you can see, we cross over the road, and there's 2 catch basins there. This would be the northerly crossing, and then 1 further down. We have our final crossing at 0 plus 200, and then it crosses and outlets into the open ditch. We've estimated the total cost of this drain with engineering and everything included at $300,700. And at this time, I take any questions from council or staff or landowners.
Thank you, Mr. Dietrich. Let me make an adjustment to our audiovisual. Colleagues and any assessed landowners have the opportunity at this point to ask questions. Why don't we turn to see if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to ask questions? Clerk Klein, have we had any indication ahead of this meeting to that effect? So is anyone in the gallery here wishing to speak to this drain? Okay, I'm not seeing any indication of that. So let's turn to colleagues at council, and if anyone decides they wish to ask questions from the audience, we'll give you another shot at that. Anyone on council wishing to ask questions? Councillor Johnston, let me get your microphone. There we go.
So, Chris, thank you for the report. You're deepening the open portion or the closed portion?
We're doing work on 85 meters of the open ditch, and we're going to get all the approvals. We have approval from DFO. They said we don't need their approval, and then the Maitland Valley is going to give us approval prior to construction.
But you talk about that it wasn't big enough capacity, which is typical for a drain constructed in 1953.
Yes.
But it didn't have the depth. So which are you deepening?
We're deepening the entire drain where we can.
Perfect.
And you'll see on our profiles, which is not on the screen right now, but the second page is the profile where it actually shows the depth of the existing drain.
Okay.
So you can see we're a good at least 2 feet deeper.
Excellent.
If not more.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, anyone else wishing to ask a question at council? All right, one more shot at the audience. Anyone wishing to ask any questions about this drain and the recommendations of the engineer? All right, we're not seeing any indication of that. We're not seeing any indication of withdrawal or significant concerns that have been raised. So as a consequence, this public meeting pertaining to the Broughton Municipal Drain can be adjourned. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Dietrich.
you.
All right, next up is a public meeting for the consideration report on the Bender Quantz municipal drain. Very much second verse, same as the first. We're singing from the same songbook here. Different conductor, it would appear. So I welcome all those who have decided to attend tonight's meeting for the purpose of offering any comment or hearing the report of the engineer. At this time, we'll call on Matt Ash, who's with GM Blue Plant Engineering, the expert on this one, to present his report to council. Let me just get the right camera working for you here. And I think we are ready to have you.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. We're here tonight to discuss the Bender Quantz municipal drain, and I will try to stay as succinct as my colleague Chris previously did. This is a drainage system that is currently in place in Wallace Ward. It is just north of line 89 and between Road 165 and Highway 23. Serves primarily agricultural lands, but it also extends up into the Eden Grove property, which is formerly the Midwestern Center. There was a request submitted back in 2022 for improvement by a Kay Jackson, who is on the bottom end of this drain just before Road 165. That was due to numerous blowouts. This drain was originally constructed in 1953, and the open tile, or the tile drain portion of it that exists today, is still the same as was in place in 1953, mainly 10-inch and 6-inch field tile. At the site meeting held last year, we also received a request to consider enclosing the bottom part of the drain, which is currently an open ditch. So we proceeded with that work as well. The intent here is to replace the entirety of this drain with 525 millimeter concrete drain tile. Would extend from Eden Grove all the way down to the outlet with a small portion of 600 millimeter at the very bottom end. We're also providing additional capacity for Eden Grove. That came as a request from the owners of that property. They have plans for future development in that area and had requested additional capacity to lessen their stormwater management requirements at that time. Of course, the cost difference to provide that is assessed directly to Eden Grove, and similarly, the cost difference to the cost to enclose the bottom end is assessed directly to that particular landowner. We did receive a permit from Maitland Valley back in March. The DFO permit was a little slower in coming for the enclosure. We actually had to do a site meeting with them, but all went well, and we do now have all of our permits in hand for this work. We estimate the cost at $250,000. The drain improvement portion will be eligible for OMAFRA grant, but the enclosure will not be. Of course, assessed landowners have all the regular rights of approval and appeal, including court of revision and tribunal should they desire. And there are some landowners here tonight. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ash. This is the opportunity from questions, again, from either the landowners who will be assessed on this drain or of council. Why don't we turn first to the opportunity for landowners. If any who are present who are landowners wish to speak to this matter, they are invited to come forward at this time. Anyone wishing to speak to this one? Okay, looks like we have a potential taker. Please come forward. Share with us your name, if you would, and how you're connected.
Hi, I'm Ronald Martin with Eden Grove. Just speaking for the group, we're accepting it as is. We're actually not challenging it. We're glad to see it happen and encourage you to accept it as it's written. So, if there's any questions, I guess.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Martin. We will turn to council. If there are any others in the audience wishing to speak, let's just check on that first. Anyone else wishing to ask a question or comment? All right, let's hear from council. Colleagues, anyone have questions or comments to make about this report from the engineer on this drain? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Last chance, anyone with questions? Make sure we fairly hear everything we need to hear. Okay. Thank you then. We are seeing at this point no one who has expressed an intent to withdraw. We have not had any significant concerns raised. In fact, one individual representing the in-growth landowners group expressed support for this. So we can therefore assume at this point that we can adjourn this meeting, and I'll do that. Now, let us turn to a resolution to bring us back into regular council at this hour. Thank you, Mr. Ash, and those who attended, Mr. Horst, Mr. Martin. Resolution as follows, that the public meetings under the Drainage Act are now adjourned at 7:52 p.m. and the council reconvenes into regular open council. Can I call for a mover on this? Councillor Blazek, thank you. Councillor Richardson will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Okay. So Councillor Duncan is, what say you? You're in favor? Councillor Blazek in favor? I think that carries us. So that motion is carried. That means that we are reconvened into regular open council. Let's deal with some of the follow-up business from that then. We have some resolutions relating to these drains as follows. First, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth accepts the Broughton Municipal Drain Report dated July 14th, 2023, prepared by Dietrich Engineering. Moved by Councillor Johnston, seconded by Councillor Rothwell. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And Councillor Blazek is recording a manual yes. And that is carried. Next up is a quarter revision date here as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth will hold the quarter of revision for the Broughton Municipal Drain on Monday, September 18th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Andreessen and Councillor Duncan will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And Councillor Blazek is still fighting, but we're glad you're still standing too, as she votes yes from what I'm seeing. So that is carried. All right, let's turn to the Bender Quance drain as follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth accepts the Bender Quance Municipal Drain Report dated July 26, 2023, prepared by GM Blue Plan Engineering Limited. Moved by Councillor Johnston's nodding his head, so that's a good sign. Seconded by Councillor Duncan. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Yeah, it seems to be here, but it's in the sequence. Do you want me to wait on the Bender? I mean, we're well into this at this point. And that is carried. Okay, now let's see if I can find the bylaw here. There's Bender. I'm not seeing the resolution for Broughton, but I can make that work. I know what to do here. So we do have for the Broughton drain. This is still item 4.2, as follows: that bylaw number 92 2023, being a bylaw to provide for drainage works, the Broughton Municipal Drain, be introduced, read, and considered read a first and second time, and be provisionally adopted, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Andreessen. All right, any discussion or debate on this one? Let's have that vote. And that is carried. And now let's do the quarter revision resolution for Bender Quants. As follows, that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth will hold the quarter revision for the Bender Quants Municipal Drain on Monday, September 18th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. I call for a mover on this, Councillor Andreessen, and seconded by Councillor Duncan. Thank you. If we can organize that vote, let's have that one. And that is carried. And now let's do the bylaw for the Bender Quants one. Shuffling papers. All right, here we go. The bylaw number 93-2023, being a bylaw to provide for drainage works, Bender Quants Municipal Drain, be introduced, read, and considered read a first and second time, and be provisionally adopted, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. And I call for a mover on this one. Moved by Deputy McKellen, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Andreessen. Any discussion or debate on that one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Right, we got our way through the drains. A useful skill. That brings us next then to agenda item number 5, reports from departments and key staff. We have no reports coming from the CAO's department this evening. Tonight we have 2 items coming. That's just one item. Yeah, my notes are not quite right. We have 1 item coming from the Strategic Initiatives Department, a rather important one. For item 5.2.1, North Perth Manager of Strategic Initiatives, Jessica McLean, brings forward a draft of the North Perth Housing Action Plan, which will be submitted on this council's approval as a primary support for our application to Canada's Housing Accelerator Fund. Ms. McLean, you're standing, you're ready to go. Let me just get the right camera, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg, and good evening, Council. At the North Perth Council meeting on July 24th, staff shared information on the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund, or commonly referred to as HAF. This included the requirement of a housing action plan to be included in a municipal submission to the HAF program, and plans to develop a county-wide housing needs assessment. Tonight, staff are seeking council approval of the final housing action plan, which is attached to this report, as well as direction to apply to the HAF program. The final action plan for North Perth includes 12 initiatives that align with the HAF program guidelines. These initiatives focus on transformational change in terms of removing barriers to and accelerating the growth of housing supply in the community. Implementation of the initiatives will require collaboration amongst various departments, as well as with the County of Perth and other member municipalities. Any municipal costs associated with the implementation of initiatives planned for 2024 will be included in the annual 2024 budget process. You will note that on the final page of the action plan is an implementation schedule. Work also continues with Watsons and Associates on the Perth County Housing Needs Assessment, and this was approved by County Council at the August 3rd meeting. Watsons will be providing staff with the growth targets and housing supply calculations in the coming days that are required for our HAF submission. Once these numbers are received, staff will be able to calculate the amount of HAF incentive funds that will be associated with our application. Watsons will also be providing a draft housing needs assessment to be included in the submission, and this will allow for some additional points to be received in our application scoring. Lastly, HAF approvals are anticipated for fall 2023, with contribution agreements executed before year end. If North Perth's submission to the HAF program is not successful, staff do feel that the Housing Action Plan and Housing Needs Assessment will still be valuable tools to support council and staff on department business planning and budgeting related to housing work. And lastly, just to note that the applications to the HAF program are due on Friday, August 18th, so coming up quite soon. I can answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. I know that you're going to be very busy this week should council move forward with this. Questions, first comments on this for staff? Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kiesenberg, and thank you, Jessica, for all your work with this. So this is still in draft. You're still going to continue to work on it. Is that correct?
So this is a final version for the application,
Okay.
but we can continue to work on it. The council approved plan does not need to be, the plan doesn't need to be approved by council until the contribution agreement is signed if we are successful.
Okay.
But this information will be put into our application along with those additional calculations that are coming from Watson's and Associates on the housing targets.
Okay. And if I may, when I was reading through this, it mentioned having a housing statement, correct?
Density statement.
A density statement. Thank you, a density statement. And I wasn't sure I caught it in here. Is it under development or is it actually in here? Because I'm kind of missing it.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. So one of the initiatives will be to establish a density statement. So that work would be completed as part of
in the next few weeks.
This plan. I think that was scheduled for 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's forthcoming later on.
Yes.
Okay.
One of the more immediate actions that would be implemented as part of the plan.
Okay. And it's also through Watson's that would help develop that or support that, or?
That hasn't been determined yet. Okay. We would have to see.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it.
I think, I mean, it's something that I've had to try to figure out too, right? What the work that Watson is doing is sort of statistical and modeling in terms of trying to identify the need and the gap that we have in our community. Their work is largely, because it's largely rooted in statistics and numbers, it's largely not directional. It doesn't suggest a plan inherently. It just says, here's the reality, and here's what we think could happen in the next few years in terms of numbers, right? Beyond that, it's up to council to have a plan, and hence I think this draft, which gets submitted with our proposal, has to address a number of sort of criteria that the Government of Canada and the CMHC in this programming, if I'm not mistaken, have established, right? And we have to hit so many of them before it's a valid and compliant application. And then the fight begins because communities all across Canada are trying to get the money, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to understand that the Watson work is at this point hurriedly happening because it's now been funded by County Council. And it is merely a sort of data model, right? It says where there are gaps, how big are those gaps, what do we need the most of moving forward? What we do from there is up to us.
Okay.
Anyone else with questions? Councillor Rothwell?
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and thank you, Jessica, for the report. I am very hopeful. Council is supportive here of this. I suspect we will be. The work is required whether or not we are successful in receiving the funding. Some municipalities and groups are getting sad news that they are not qualified or not receiving funds, and most recently in the City of London, Indwell's program for redevelopment of a former hospital site. They were looking at some $11 million to help give that project the incentive it needed to move forward. Nevertheless, hope springs eternal when we have applications and grants And we are small but mighty, and I hope David will hold hands with Goliath and come forward with money to make this really happen. Carrying forward with my July comments about David and Goliath, it is inappropriate. I know staff have sent the letter that states to the federal government that we should be considered in a different pool than the large municipalities. They have their own specific interests and concerns, and we have ours. But nevertheless, people are people, and whether we're in big communities or small, there's a great need for us to move forward. I believe there's good wisdom in our plan that's put forward, and I will certainly support it. Thank you.
Thanks. And I'll add my voice to what you've just said, which is that I think staff have pulled together a pretty remarkable document that hits a lot of the requirements of the program. We just have to acknowledge that it's a highly competitive field right now. And yeah, you're right. I mean, I saw that same story, Councillor Rothwell, of London not getting its RHI funding for the Indwell project, or the Indwell part of the project that they're working on at the hospital site. So these are interesting times, and we're against very large competitors in our flight or cohort here. So, but the work is remarkable, I think, and appreciated, and I too intend to vote in favor of this one. Anyone else with first comments or questions? All right, let's have the resolution then as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the North Perth Housing Action Plan for the purposes of applying to the Housing Accelerator Fund, and that Council directs staff to apply to the Housing Accelerator Fund. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Rothwell. Councillor Johnston will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate further? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And Councillor Blazek, it seems like it's good news that you're back on East Crime. Excellent. All right. Thank you, Ms. McLean. As you've heard, we appreciate your comments. Deputy Mayor Kellum?
Yes, through you, Mayor Kaysberg, just a comment and to add on to what Councillor Rothwell and yourself says. So now that this is approved, if I'm not attending AMO, but if anyone is going to AMO and you come across some people that you can bend their ear, do the best that you can, because we have some pretty strong relationships with people there. So I fully hope that we get some funds for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good point. All right. We have no reports from the corporate services group tonight. Likewise, no reports from programs, no reports from facilities, no reports from environmental services, and no reports from the manager of operations. So they're all busy doing what they need to be doing, which is wonderful. And hopefully some of them are taking vacation at some point this summer. So that means that we're at item 5.8, reports from the Development and Protective Services Department. As item 5.8.1, Council is invited to exempt from part lot control lands designated as residential in the Listowel ward at 695 Connors Drive. The usual purpose of such an action, and I know that Jericho will tell us this, is to allow adjustment of lot lines between residential parcels. And so we have County of Perth Planner Jericho Gilbert with us to present an overview. Welcome. Let me get the cameras right here.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. So yes, this is an exemption from part lot control application. It's in a central part of Listowel. Surrounding land uses are residential in nature. And, now I'm going too fast. So as our mayor enlightened us to, so this exemption will allow the creation of two units of a semi-detached house to have their own independent lots. So the official plan designation is residential as part of the Listowel settlement area, and the zoning in this case is residential zone 2. And the structure in question has been built. So as we know, an exemption from part lot control is allowed under section 50.7 of the Planning Act Part lot control is a power municipalities have to control where property lines can be established on that property. So instead of going through the process of, say, a consent or what have you, we allow certain exemptions to happen through a certain duration of time so that we lift the municipality's part lot control powers if council so chooses. And in that course, they can place the lot lines. And part of the benefits to this type of application is that it can be done very quickly, since there's no public notice requirements. Because of that, we ensure that it meets all official plan and zoning requirements. And it's, as I said, only given temporary. Now, I do want to note, for both this one and exemption from part lot control application 3-2023, there is an inconsistency between the staff report and the draft bylaw. The staff report says that the exemption from part lot control will be in effect for 1 year, whereas the bylaw says 2 years. The 2 years is the standard that we normally give. It's just an error. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you for letting me present on this file.
All right, thank you, Planner Gilbert. Let's turn to council colleagues' questions or first comments on this one. Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Thanks, Jarek, for the report. I presume that difference between the 1 and 2 years is on the basis that this is an existing building. It's already constructed, so therefore the 2 years is far more time that's required to complete the legal requirement, correct?
I have with these files in particular, I'm sure they will be registered as soon as the bylaw goes through. Prior to COVID, the standard was kind of 1 year for exemption from part lot control. We're beginning to give them more, kind of similar in nature to the Planning Act, 2 years. Planning can adjust that amount depending on the application, though. And for that matter, council can also adjust that amount as well. So on the bylaws this time around, it's 2 years. And as Councillor Rothwell pointed out, it will most likely be registered within the next few weeks as soon as that bylaw goes through.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or first comments? All right, I have 2 resolutions on this one for consideration. The first is that North Perth Council approves a request for exemption from part lot control file 2-2023 submitted by Euro Custom Homes Inc. for lands described as Lot 40, Plan 44M72, 695 Connors Drive, Listowel Ward, Municipality of North Perth, and forwards the bylaw to the County of Perth for approval. Can I call for mover? Councillor Richardson, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Blazek. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. And now for the bylaw. The bylaw number 90-2023 being a bylaw to exempt from part lot control Lot 40 Plan 44M72 695 Connors Drive be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Moved by Deputy Mayor Callum, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Thank you. I was going to call your name out before you actually put down. Reading your mind. All right. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that one is carried as well. Thank you. Similar action, this time a different parcel. As item 5.8.2, council is invited to exempt from part lot control lands designated as residential in the Listowel Ward at 715 Hollinger Avenue South. The usual purpose of such an action is to allow the adjustment of lot lines, as you've heard explained. So we'll let Planner Gilbert take over again and tell us about this particular one.
Yes, very similar in nature to the previous one, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but just a block away from the other one. Surrounding land uses are residential in nature. The zoning in this one is residential zone 4. And as you can see, they will be establishing one half of a semi-detached dwelling. So happy to answer any questions. The same kind of note on the length of the bylaw in question is it's going to be 2 years from the date of adoption. Thank you.
Thanks. Are these occupied at this point?
Yes. Sorry, Mayor, through you, Mayor Kasenberg. I believe they are. I'm not entirely sure if they're rented or owners, but there was definitely people using the property.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? All right, I have 2 resolutions on this one, just as we did with the last one, as follows: that the North Perth Council approves the request for exemption from part lot control file 3-2023 submitted by Euro Custom Homes Inc. for lands described as Lot 32, Plan 44M72, 715 Hollinger Avenue South, Listowel Ward, Municipality of North Perth, and forwards the bylaw to the County of Perth for approval. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that's carried. Thank you. And now the bylaw as follows: that bylaw number 91-2023, being a bylaw to exempt from part lot control lot 32, Plan 44M72, 715 Hollinger Avenue South, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed. The said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Moved by Councillor Blazek, seconded by Councillor Andreessen. Any discussion or debate on that one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Thank you. All right, item 5.8.3. Now we're in the severance part here of the meeting. Council is invited to forward a recommendation to approve with a collection of conditions to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or to designate related to an application requesting consent to sever lands in the Listowel Ward of the Municipality of North Perth owned by 245-9825 Ontario and represented by Schenck Legal. Planner Gilbert is still with us. You're up again. Let me get the camera.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So yes, this is consent application B20-23. Still within the same area of Listowel, so it's central, south of Main Street West, and it's off of lot, the block 4 of MP 10-01, which is the final phase of a plan of subdivision near Victoria Avenue South. So the applicants are hoping to create 3 residential lots. It's within the Listowel settlement area with residential zoning. Surrounding land uses are residential, including medium density housing within this subdivision. And it backs onto the North Perth Trail system. So the zoning of subject lands is R4-7. The -7 is a special provision which allows row houses for this subdivision. This current proposal isn't including row houses, but if, in theory, other parts of the subdivision do. And it's the creation of 2 lots. So lot 11, which is on the far right there, there is a fourplex nearing completion. This is because of fourplex is permitted by the existing zoning, and they want to get ahead of it before planning, before pursuing the severance. The same developer is considering putting a fourplex on lot 12 or the center portion once the lot is established. The sketch in your report package also shows a fourplex being placed on lot 13, so that triangle portion to the left there. It is important to note that these are just concept drawings. There is additional planning applications that would likely be required for a fourplex to go on that lot, but the lot can support, through its lot area and lot frontage, other forms of development. And it just means that if the applicant would like to pursue a fourplex in the future on that lot, that they would have to receive the adequate planning approvals, which is why planning's not adding that on as a condition of consent. Now, one of the conditions of consent that we don't normally, or I shouldn't say don't normally receive, but don't always see, is there has been a request through Public Works to have a small addition to the Victoria Avenue South Road allowance, just in that top right corner. The benefits for this is that in the future, that portion of the lot isn't very beneficial to lot 13 in question, and it would open the potential for a future sidewalk. And the applicants are aware of this condition and are accepting of it. So notice of application was given on July 4th, and we have received, we as the planning department have received 4 formal comments from members of the public expressing concerns. The concerns are attached to the agenda package and detailed a bit in the staff report. Essentially, issues over increased intensification in this area, concerns over privacy between the fourplexes and other, the townhouse development in the back, and concerns over protection of the natural environment. Because of the number of concerns, this file will be going to the Land Division Committee at the end of this month, hopefully. So what we're presenting today is that North Perth accept the conditions that are relevant to the municipality, and we'll kind of go from there. The planning department at this point in time is in support of the application. The principle of development was established with the R4 zoning back when the subdivision was initially developed. And we do believe it falls in line with good planning practice and policies. So happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jerica. Among the concerns expressed by those who filed concerns, there were some concerns about ecology, about sort of what's going on with the wildlife in that area. And of course, it's not for me or any of us to adjudicate whether those are viable or valid concerns, because most of us aren't expert ecologists in the urban environment. In fact, I'd hazard none of us are. And so I'm wondering if you could comment, have we required any kind of formal assessment of this area with regards to the wildlife concerns that were expressed at any point in even the subdivision planning to this point in time?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yes, the initial subdivision did have an environmental impact study done, especially for those of you around Listable at the time. It was a contentious application just on the number of trees that were removed from the lot. That being said, there are measures in the subdivision agreement that basically work to ensure that the development, when it occurs there, such as through practices like erosion, fencing, and measures like that, that there won't be harm to the adjacent natural system, which is something I've gone over a little bit with those residents that were concerned. Because some of the concern was kind of over, say, garbage from construction and what have you. That kind of enters the realm of property standards and bylaw enforcement. As kind of stated, through the plan of subdivision, it was established that development could safely occur on these sites. And sorry, that's kind of what I have to say over that. And that's part of the reason why we didn't request an environmental impact study for this lot in particular.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, other questions or first comments on this one? Deputy Mayor Kellum.
Yes, through you, Mayor Kasenberg, and thank you, Jerica, for your presentation. Yes, this has been a contentious piece of land for several years, and it has come a long way. Density, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm hearing the same comments again. We've already allowed fourplexes in that area now, so I'm not sure what another two. I have no problem with that at all, and I've mentioned that several times to them. We are concerned, or they are concerned about that one lot, if you could bring it back up on the corner as a fourplex, where there is no way you'll put a fourplex in there without, whether it's sight lines, parking. There'll have to be too many, I think, changes to that. So I believe they're okay with the two yellow portions. It's just that red one that we need to be very, very careful about. But that property sure has increased density in that area for sure.
All right, Planner Gilbert, did you wish to make any comments in response to the Deputy Mayor's observations?
Through you, Mayor. No, I believe his comments are warranted, and I didn't want to focus too much on that concept plan just because it will require more work on the part of the applicant to properly justify for issues such as a reduction in parking and a reduction in rear yard setback. That being said, if someone, whether it's the applicants or if they sell that property to someone else, it could be conceivable that a semi-detached dwelling fits much better in there, or even a single detached. There might be a way for them to justify the fourplex. I don't want that to escape the realm of possibility, but it's not really the subject of this application. I don't want us to get too hung up on it, which is why I kind of removed it from the portion of the slides on the screen. But no, definitely, they're good comments.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with comments or questions at this point? Okay, we have a resolution. If you'll indulge me, I won't read the conditions. They are in your minutes package here. I see Councillor Johnston's disappointment in that announcement, but here we go. That North Perth Council receives a report entitled Consent Application File B20-23 affecting lands described as Block 4, Registered Plan 44M81, Malcolm Crescent, Listowel Ward, Municipality of North Perth, and that North Perth Council forwards the conditions listed in the staff report below to the County of Perth Land Division Committee for Consent File B20-23 affecting the property legally described as Block 4, Registered Plan 44M81, Malcolm Crescent, Listowel Ward, Municipality of North Perth. Recommended conditions, there are 5 of them that are being forwarded, and this is moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? I'm not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Next up is item 5.8.4. Council is invited to forward a recommendation to approve with a collection of conditions to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate related to an application requesting consent to sever lands in the Wallace Ward of the Municipality of North Perth owned by Mark and Dana Stanley, and parts desired to be owned by Willard and Linda Martin. This one's a shade different than the usual consents that we see at this table. This file is represented by MTE OLS. County of Perth Planner John Bice works on North Perth files, is with us remotely tonight to provide an overview and recommendation. Planner Bice, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg and Council. I'll just quick share my screen for members. Can council see this?
Yes, we can. We've got you.
Perfect, thank you. So this application number is B2923. As Mayor Kaysenberg had noted, the owners are Mark and Dana Stanley, and the applicants are Willard and Linda Martin. This property is located just south of the community of Kurtzville, along Road 175. It's on the east side of the road. It's located at 8669 Road 175. So this application is for a consent to sever an existing farm dwelling. The subject lands are actively cropped and are surrounded by agricultural uses, as well as residential uses in the community of Kurtzville. The proposal, it is what is informally known as a reverse surplus farm dwelling severance. The applicants, again, are Willard and Linda Martin, and their home farm is located at 6447 Perth Line 88, which is a couple of lines to the east, I believe, in North Perth. So essentially, by purchasing the retained lands, as you see on this slide here, the Willard and Linda Martin are consolidating their farming operation through this consent. So a condition of consent is in place that requires that the Martins purchase the retained farm parcel, as Mark and Dana Stanley do not own a second farm property. So the consent sketch, as you see, illustrates that a proposed severed lot with a lot area of approximately 2.18 acres is proposed, and this severed lot contains the existing dwelling, well, septic system, as well as a shop, chicken coop, and a kid's play set. The proposed retained farmland would have a lot area of 16 hectares, or close to 40 acres, and is an existing small undersized agricultural parcel. So the buildings and services that are seen on that severed parcel, they are considered clustered into one area, and they're accessed by one laneway. There's also a tree line along the southern property line, as you can see by the small dots on that severed parcel to the south. So this linear tree line, in conjunction with the children's play sets, is considered a residential use. No current cropland is proposed to be impacted by the proposed surplus farm consent. So both the severed and the retained parcels will be required to be rezoned as a condition of consent. The area outlined in yellow will be required to be rezoned A1, Agricultural 1 Special, and this would be to allow the non-farm residential dwelling, as well as the non-commercial keeping of livestock in that small chicken coop, and to recognize a site-specific reduced rear and side yard setback for the play set, as it's considered an accessory structure. And I will show a picture of that in the next slides to come. And the area outlined in red is to be rezoned A-62 Special, which is, again, agricultural. And this area this is to ensure that no residential dwellings or mobile homes can be placed on that parcel, on that retained farmland, and to recognize a reduced lot area requirement in the North Perth zoning bylaw. So notice of application was given on July 28th by regular mail to adjacent landowners, and then a notice sign being posted as well. We did receive a few comments, the first being from the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, who has provided that they have no objections to the application. Another comment was received by Blue Water Recycling Association, who again provided that they have no comments at this time. And then no formal comments were received from members of the public. I did receive a few phone calls from members of the public, but no one produced any sort of formal written comments or wished to have any comments written or spoken at this meeting. There was one individual who indicated their request to receive notice of decision, and that was the only formal message received by members of the public. As you see in the slide here, this is the dwelling, the surplus farm dwelling, and that is taken looking to the south. This image here shows the area around would be the eastern lot line. That shows the kids' play set. Since it's built in the air, it's considered an accessory structure by the building department. Some comments from building inspectors provided that it would have needed to be receiving a building permit. So that's why it's considered an accessory structure at this time. And then you can see some raised beds as well. Finally, this is an image of the northern property line, just showing the difference between the shop and the agricultural fields, as you can see on the screen. I'd be happy to take any questions as well at this time. And thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Planner Bice. Looks like Councillor Andreessen has a question. Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. Mr. Bice, I have a couple questions. My first one is just around the severance going through that barn. So are there plans for that barn to change?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. There is no barn. So the structure that you did see was a shop. Okay. It houses, I think, a golf simulator, as well as a few other items. No agricultural items in that shop.
So I'm just confused about why the line doesn't go around the building instead of through it.
I'll share my screen again here. Could you provide the question again? My apologies.
Okay, so that's I'm just seeing the sketch differently. If you take a look at the aerial photo, it's much different than the sketch. So that clarifies that. That's helpful. My second question is just around the frontage of the property, about whether it could be cultivated for agricultural land versus being used for that new residence. So that frontage could be cultivated, and I'm wondering if, in order to preserve more agricultural land, is that a consideration?
Yes, thank you. Again, through you, Mayor Kaysenberg, that's a great question. It was considered by planning staff as well. At the end of the day, planning staff considered that the tree line produced a pretty, it's not pretty, but a nice residential agricultural divide, and considered the tree line in line with the play sets to be a residential use. We did have conversations with the owners of the property, who had originally submitted an application for 2.4 acres, and in some discussions with the owners, that line was brought in a little tighter to reduce the amount of agricultural land that would go to the severed parcel. But it's a great comment to make, because it was definitely considered by planning staff, and it's a consideration that we need to make for these surplus farm dwelling severances.
Yes, in the past we have conserved land, like frontage on these kinds of properties for cultivation purposes. And I may be looking at the wrong photograph, I'm not sure. Is it a bush? Or is that cultivated land? I don't know it very well.
Through you, Mayor Kaysenberg, are you talking about the tree line here?
The frontage there, that's not cultivated at the moment?
It's not cultivated at the moment.
Okay.
The proposal isn't to eat into any sort of cultivated land. The trees were planted, I believe, in 2019. So they would essentially produce a residential use associated with that lot line there.
So essentially that land was changed to almost to put some forestry in there, I guess, with trees.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Kiesenberg, that could be considered by the owners of the property for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Right. I'm assuming those trees are not all that mature at this point. If you said they were planted in 2019, just an educated guess. Is that fair, Mr. Bice?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And the frontage onto the line there that is sort of between the driveway and the trees is a grassed area at this point in time?
Yes, that's correct. It's made up partially of the septic system as well.
Septic
Okay,
system in
thank
the
you.
front part.
Other questions or comments, Councillor Rothwell?
Thanks very much, Mayor Kiesenberg. I just want to clarify through you, Mayor Kiesenberg, thanks for the report, John. So on the report photo, it shows where Road 175 is located on the report photo. This is on page 226 of our agenda package. I believe Councillor Andreessen was mentioning when you look at the area yellow and red. So there's 3 buildings on that air photo. There's the dwelling, and then there's the shop, which has a green roof. And then the 3rd building is to the south of that, and I believe that's what Councillor Andreessen was mentioning. Clearly, when we look at the air photo, go from the air photo and then look at the survey sketch, that building has been removed. Well, I believe it was a barn at one point, has been removed. So I think that's the issue that Councillor Andreessen was raising. And clearly, when we look at the surveyor's sketch, that building is no longer there. So there's no line going through the building per se because there's no building there. That was just a clarification for Councillor Andreessen and for you. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or first comments about this one? I'm not seeing any, so I have a resolution for our consideration as follows. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the report entitled Consent Application File B29-23, affecting lands described as Concession 4, Part Lot 48, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth, and that North Perth Council forwards the conditions listed in the report to the County of Perth Land Division Committee or its designate for Consent File B29-23, affecting lands described as Concession 4, Part Lot 48, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth, and there are 7 conditions that have been proposed. I won't read them all unless it is demanded. Can I call for a mover? Deputy Mayor Kellum, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Richardson. Any discussion or debate further to this? Councillor Rothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. And further to Councillor Andreessen's comments regarding the lawn, what is now lawn area in the to the west of the existing new dwelling. I believe the concern that's been expressed is that land area to the front, which is currently grass. Based on the information that Planner Bice has said, these trees were planted in 2019. Frankly, it appears to me as though plans were in place for this severance some time ago. This is not the reason why we have surplus farmhouse severance policies. That you're playing around with policy, in my view, when you build the house where you build it, and you have a grassed area all in front. It is not required for the residential servicing, save and except the area that's for the septic system. I don't begrudge that. I do believe that the area that Mr. Bice mentioned, the original application for 2.4 acres, I suspect it's on that north side of the yellow line. It was probably, quote, square, rectangular, I suspect. So clearly they've made some effort to reduce the amount of agricultural land, but I am concerned that this sort of application will continue to move forward as people build new houses and agreements are made to purchase the agricultural land and they end up with 2+ acres, which are not necessarily required for the residential use. But that's my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Anyone else with discussion, debate on this one? Okay, I think it's duly moved and seconded, so let's have that vote. Councillor Rothwell,
I'll have to not in favor.
not in favor, opposed, okay. So that is carried 6-2. Thank you. That allows us to move forward on our agenda, but I think maybe just sort of looking at what lies ahead on the agenda, it might be a decent time for a 5-minute bio break. So let's take that break at this point, and we'll come back in 5 minutes' time, just after 8:50 on the clock. Okay, we are resuming our council meeting after a brief break. We're now at item 6 on our agenda. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports that you'd like to ask of staff or of our committees? Seeing none, let's move forward to item 7. Tonight, we don't have any additional items of correspondence on our agenda that needs to be attended to by council, so we can move past that to the consideration of bylaws that have been recommended to us for action. So item 8.1, council is asked to assume services in what seems to be known as the Wallace View developments. I have a bylaw enablement resolution to that end as follows: that bylaw number 85-2023, being a bylaw to assume the services of Wallace View Developments Limited, registered plan 44M56, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Richardson, and a seconder would be helpful. Councillor Johnston. Any discussion or debate on this bylaw, questions that you might have? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. As item 8.2, council is invited to approve the repair and maintenance of the Barnett Municipal Drain Spring Creek Watercourse with a bylaw enablement resolution as follows: that bylaw number 87-2023, being a bylaw to authorize maintenance and repair of a municipal drain, Barnett Municipal Drain Spring Creek Watercourse, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover on that one? Councillor Andreessen, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. As item 8.3, council is asked to finalize with actual cost the repairs made to the branch B drain of drain number 59 by bylaw. The enablement resolution for this one is as follows: that bylaw number 88-2023, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 124-2019, B drain of drain number 59, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Andreessen and Councillor Duncan. This one needs a fancier name. Any discussion or debate on this one? All right, seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried with a little bit of table humor from Councillor Johnston that's off the record, but that I heard. Deputy Mayor Callum is enjoying as well. All right, and as item 8.4, council is asked to finalize with actual cost the repairs made to the Galbraith drain, again by bylaw, the enablement resolution as follows: at bylaw number 89-2023, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 63-2021, Galbraith Municipal Drain, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. We are at item 9 on our agenda. Are there any councillors wishing leave to give notice of motion this evening? Seeing none, let's move to item 10 on our agenda. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? Councillor Rothwell, let's begin with you.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. It's my pleasure to announce that our daughter Mary and her husband Tony are proud parents of a new baby girl, newest resident of North Perth. Her name is Willow Isabel Byman, born on Friday. Mother and daughter and big sister Charlotte and Tony are all doing well.
That is excellent news. Thank you. All right. Congratulations to the parents, to the extended family. Thank you. Anyone else with announcements this evening to the benefit of North Perth? Should be a taxpayer soon enough. All right. Apparently, we shouldn't crack such jokes at the table. Okay. I think that brings us then to item 11 on our agenda. We do have three matters to be considered in a closed session meeting of council tonight. I'm going to read the resolution that will enable our action to enter that closed session as follows. The council proceeds in camera at 8:58 p.m. to address matters pertaining to the following. First, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board regarding Plan 44M10, Part Block 39RP 44R 3986, Part PT Part 1, Nelson Avenue South. Second, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board regarding property described as Plan 194, Lot 1, Part Lot 7 of Lots 21, 22, NS Main Street Plan 149, Part Lot 22, Listowel, Municipality of North Perth. And third, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board regarding property described as Concession 1, Part Lots 28 and 29 Wallace, and Concession 1, Part Lot 30, Registered Plan 44R 4735, Parts 1 and 3, and part of Part 2, Wallace, Municipality of North Perth. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Rothwell, thank you, and Councillor Blazek would be our seconder, and everyone is smiling because that temptation to ask me to read that all again, reading from the phone book, is very real, right? Okay, duly moved and seconded. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. That means we are adjourned from open council meeting and will adjust our audiovisual settings for closed meeting session. right. Okay. Council is resuming its regular open session meeting, and we turn our attention to item 12 on the agenda, which is reporting out from the closed session. I can confirm that Council did discuss the matters identified in our enabling resolution for a closed session meeting of Council, and did give staff direction pertaining to the matters, the essence at this point, which will remain confidential for the reasons that we stipulated in our enablement of a closed session. Council, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what's called the confirmatory bylaw. I have the draft of that as item 13.1 on our agenda. The enablement resolution as follows, that bylaw number 86-2023 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Richardson, thank you. Councillor Andreessen will be our seconder. Any discussion or debate on this? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried, and that means we've hit the happy point. Adjournment is in order at this point, and I have a resolution to that effect that the council meeting adjourns at 9:49 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, August 28th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Can I call for a mover on that? Councillor Rothwell, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Blazek. It's not debatable. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Colleagues, we have gotten through what we needed to get through tonight, and our next regular council meeting is not next Monday, but the following Monday, August 28th. Until that time, this council is adjourned.